Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. As our population ages, more and more of us are finding ourselves in this role as a caregiver. And if you're not caring for your parents, you may be caring for a spouse, a loved one. It's never easy. There's a lot of challenges that come along with that, a lot of emotions that are expressed, and there's also a lot of regrets. You know, we think, I should have done this. Maybe I should have done that. How do we get past those regrets when we are caring for somebody? We're going to talk about that today. She does an amazing job of shedding light on all of this stuff as a caregiver coach. It actually exists. There's coaches for everything. We've got one of these right here. Marika Humphreys joins us on the program. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Yeah, doing well. I feel like we're on the cusp of the holiday season, you know, like October is, it's still, we're not there yet, but the weather starts to change and you just start feeling like, you know, if you want to do any planning for things, you've got to book them now and I don't know, making plans for Thanksgiving. So it's crazy. Like, what happened to the year? It's already we are in the final quarter. So
yeah. And it doesn't feel like October was that's it. It was gone.
I know.
I don't get it. It's bizarre.
I know. This whole year feels like that, but that's what happens when you get older. Time just goes quicker. It feels like. Anyway, yeah.
Well, you know what? And with that comes, there's regrets in everything. Isn't it? You know, when you think about it, you know, okay, we'll go simple here, but this month flew by. We probably have regrets. I should have spent more time outside. The weather was warmer. I should have did this. I should have done that. They always say you should on yourself.
Should on yourself. Yes.
Yeah. But this invariably is a challenge as a caregiver because there's so many emotions going on, especially when it comes to regrets, right?
Yeah. So I want to talk about this first from the standpoint of talking about regret. Like, what is a regret? When we regret something, and usually for most of us, I think we look back to our past and we say, I should have. I wish I had made a different decision. I wish I had done something different or not done something, right? I wish I hadn't lost my temper and, you know, hit that guy or whatever. That's extreme maybe, but we look back at our past self and we judge ourselves. We make a judgment that we should have done something differently than we did, or we should have made a different decision, taken a different action. And it is really an unfair thing to do to ourselves because we're making that judgment from a future place, right? A place that is now removed from the time of the decision or action. And usually either we know more, we're a little older, we're a little wiser, we have more information, maybe we're in a better emotional space. You know, we are then a different person from who we were at the time. So, that is even true. Maybe if you regretted what you didn't do yesterday or did do yesterday, you know, you're judging it from a future place. So I want to point that out because, first of all, regrets are just unnecessary because they make us feel bad about ourselves. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't learn from things, but regret is sort of this kind of fruitless emotion, right? It's just, it doesn't take us anywhere. We don't get curious when we regret something. We just feel bad about ourselves. Like, dang, I missed that opportunity, or I should have been smarter, or I wish I wasn't like held back by fear or anxiety, you know? So it's kind of wishing. It's really unfair thing to do, and it's not a useful emotion. That being said, as humans, we feel regret. I mean, I have a couple like key things in my past from college and like early adulthood that I definitely wish I had made different choices. I wish I hadn't like let fear kind of hold me back. But I also know that, like the past is the past. I mean, we can't change it. So it's really not useful to think about. But I do want to make that clear because it's useful to think about what regrets are when you're trying to avoid them going forward.
Do you think a lot of regrets come from guilt?
I mean, I think we feel guilt when we wish we had done, when we wish we had done something different, made a different choice, behaved differently. A lot of times I think in caregiving, I was thinking about like the regrets we have in caregiving. I are often, sometimes it can be not choosing, like not putting boundaries around your time or your energy. Or I often, I've had clients say, like, especially when their husband or spouse their health is really declining and it looks like it's going to be the end, and they don't want to regret the time that they're spending then, like right then, so they like, I don't want to regret this later. I don't want to regret not spending enough time with them, which is a really, that's why I bring this up in caregiving, because I think like we can be conscious of it in the present. Like, I don't want to regret this later. How do you do that? I mean, it's a good thing to think about. How do you not have the guilt, right? So if we think about, if we connect regret and guilt, I think all of it comes down to being intentional and deliberate in the present. So that means that we have to move out of being reactive to being proactive. And when we can do that most of the time, I think that is our best way to avoid regret, is by making choices that we've thought about, right? We often, when we regret things, and I've kind of categorized them, I think we usually regret things because we didn't have enough knowledge, we didn't have enough experience, we made a decision or took action because based on a fear, like an emotion, like we had an emotion driving us. Like I mentioned, it was like a career thing that I never did because I was afraid, or we were too nervous to bring up a really difficult conversation that we never had with our loved one. And so we never talked about it, or, so a lot of times we let emotions kind of influence our behaviors. And those are the ways that we usually regret things. So if you can think about those in the present, right, it's having awareness and making decisions kind of consciously. That's what helps you avoid kind of the unconscious choices and actions we take.
Well, you bring up a great point in that we can only control the things that we can control. And when you made a decision that maybe you now regret, you made that decision based on the information that you had at the time. So there wouldn't have been any other outcome except that decision. That's what you had to go. This piece of information,
Yeah.
This. Now, fast forward later, now that you're regretting it, hypothetically, you might have more information now. You didn't have it then, So I think we need to show ourselves some grace a lot of times, when we're feeling that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are always there. There was a saying I heard from a coach. This was like decades ago, but I love it. And I've thought about it so many times. It's people are always doing the best they can, even when they clearly aren't. And you can extend that to yourself.
Say that again. I want to make sure I'm processing that right. People are
always doing the best they can, even when they clearly aren't. Or you can think of it from your own perspective, right? We're always doing the best we can, even when later it looks like we weren't. So what that means is, like, especially when you look at other people, we judge other people all the time, and it's very easy to see how other people should behave. But we're all always doing our best, even if our best at any one point in time may be terrible. But if we could do differently, we would be doing differently, right? So, sometimes our ability to make choices from an empowered place or an enlightened place or a strong place or a calm or clear, concise is very impaired or limited or, hampered by life and whatever is, affecting us. But that might be our best at that moment in time. So if you can, I love this because I feel like it flips things on its head when we judge ourselves or judge other people, right? We often we judge other people for their past mistakes and choices and actions, just like we judge ourselves. But all of it's really unfair because we're all each doing our best. Now, some people never learn from that, right? And I think this is where the next step is like just regretting something. It does no good. But if you can say, okay, I don't love the choice I made, and get curious or figure out why you did choose. And sometimes it is, I just didn't know any better. Like, especially I think the choices we make when we're younger, we just don't know. We don't have the knowledge. You don't have the experience. But other times it's because, I was letting fear push me around, or I was too afraid to stand up for myself. Or, sometimes it is those more like emotions that we've let control us that we don't, again, recognize even, or haven't grown enough to see until later in life. So that's where we can look at that and learn, and then ask, okay, how do I want to do, inform ourselves in the present? Like, what do I want to learn from that? How do I want to be different now? And I think it's caregiving. That's the important question to ask, is like, what's important now? And how do I want to be in this part of my life? And this, I often call it a role, because we're not just caregivers. We play many roles in our life, and recognizing that caregiving is a role, and depending on your own situation, it may be a big part of your life. It may be a small part of your life. It very much is unique to each person, but thinking about what's important to you in that role. How do you want to be? What are your limits? What are the things that you want to focus on? That's how we avoid making those choices that we would later then regret.
I'm still processing what you said before, in that we are
always doing the best we can, even when we're clearly not.
Do we know that we're not?
No.
Okay. All right.
Well, maybe. So I don't know. That's a good question. I think it works. I think I like it more when I think about other people, because we're judging when we judge other people. But if you can think like, I've got a teenager right now, and I often remind myself, okay, they're doing the best they can, even when to me it looks like, from my perspective, my age, my knowledge, they could do so much better, right? So but from that, I think it just like it allows you to let go of judgment of other people. But I think you can also apply it to yourself and your past self. I did the best I could at the time. Yes, I didn't know things, or yes, I was, emotionally less, emotionally weaker than I maybe am now,
Sure.
Or I was, heavily influenced by this, or, so it doesn't, it's not a way I think of excusing. I think it's a way of, like you said, giving grace and bringing understanding too.
My mom always used to say this one phrase: do the best you can with what you have. So what do you have?
Yeah.
What's before you? The information you have. You made a decision. The emotional state you were in at that moment. That's what I got.
Yeah.
If maybe you were in a different state at a different time, you might have made another decision or a different one. But that's what you have. Now, part of me, when I first heard you say that, it reminded me of, back in the day, I would always say, we can always do better. Everything you do, yes, you can always do better. Not the best way, because I piloted by from a place of perfectionism, which didn't support me, so I kind of let that go. And even owning a company, I would always say, we don't make mistakes. We don't make mistakes. Of course we do. But if you think you're not going to make them, you'll maybe you'll make less, possibly.
Yeah.
But the regret thing is probably, in my estimation, the top 5 challenges in caregiving, because you're always gonna second guess what you did.
Yeah, but that is still a choice.
This is true.
When we second guess, it is this idea that if we had made a different decision, something would have been different and it would have been better. We make this very faulty and human, like kind of arrogant, really, assumption that, oh, if I had only chosen differently or done differently. I mean, I have had countless discussions with people about if we had only gone to the doctor sooner, if the doctor hadn't missed this diagnosis.
Yep.
And we've gone down that path, because sometimes you do need to go down that path with your brain to explore that. Maybe the doctor misses a diagnosis. That happens. But it doesn't mean the outcome in the big picture would have been different. Like, we have no idea, because our human lives, there's so many variables, and especially when it comes to health,
sure,
there are countless variables. And any one thing, we can't know how a little change in that would have affected things. I mean, maybe it would have taken a different path, but you would have ended up at the same destination. So like, you could go down that all day long, but this idea that if we had, and usually for caregiving, it does show up in the form of, oh, I wish we'd gone to the doctor sooner. I wish.
But you know what? That doesn't mean the doctor, it would have made a difference.
Yeah.
We go like this to doctors. We put them on pedestals and all of that. And yes, there's some wonderful ones out there and we need them, but that doesn't mean that they have the answer. I was sharing with you before we got on here. I had laryngitis, acute laryngitis, first time in my life. 8 days ago, they told me I wouldn't be speaking for quite some time. I might need therapy. I might need speech therapy to learn how to talk again. Hello.
Yeah.
Things are working. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. They're human beings.
Yeah.
And so that, second guessing ourselves is just, first of all, if you're doing it now out there, stop. Stop.
Yes.
Because it is a choice, and you will waste so much energy second guessing. It's much more useful to make a decision, move forward, and then make a new decision. And it is a little bit different way of thinking about it, right? I get that there's some semantics there, but with second guessing, you're past focused. When you're thinking ahead or thinking of the present and the future, you're future focused. So if you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to make decision now with what I know, you may find out in 2 days' time you need to make a new decision because you got new information. Or you may find out in 2 years' time that the decision you made, you got some new information, so now you need to change course, right? I mean, usually we only know that with more information, more distance, more wisdom, a different emotion informing our state, like something changes. So we can think about it as making a decision now and then being conscious, right? I think that's the deliberateness and the being aware that's how you avoid regrets, is by being aware of the decisions you're making in the present and what's driving them. That's the biggest thing. I want
to ask you a question about decisions. When you need to make one, even though you're influenced by this medical information and you got this over here and this over here, ultimately, should you listen to your intuition, your gut feeling? And many of us, and I believe it's a beautiful thing that we were all born with. Some of us have fine-tuned it a little bit more than others, but should you put it through your intuition filter? What are you feeling? What are you, based on all the information you have here, what are you truly feeling? And should you pilot your decision based on that?
I would say it depends on the person, because some people, that is their wheelhouse, right? They're very in tuned with themselves, and they have a strong sense of intuition. Other people, very uncomfortable. I would say I'm kind of somewhat in the middle, but I'm more on the data side. Like, other people want data and fact-based decisions.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I completely pilot on facts, but even though you have these facts here, it's not making the decision for you. It's helping you.
Right.
And to your point, you have to be at a point where you trust your intuition, there comes that faith and that trust in it, that you listen to it and yes, I'm going to go with it. But if you're right, if you're not at that point, then you can't really pilot from that wheelhouse.
Yeah. And I think the reason why I'm pushing back a little bit is, and not that I disagree about trusting intuition, but I feel like I think we can get more granular than that. I think we can, because intuition, I really think is just I mean, sometimes I think we can be wrong. Also, like we can have a sense of something and it's a fear that's driving that, right? So it can be difficult to find to tease out what we think is intuition versus what is a deep-seated emotion that may be pushing you around. That's why I'm pushing back a little bit. Sometimes we have emotions like past something from our past that can push us around, and it can be very subtle, and it may feel like an inner knowing, like, oh, that makes me nervous. To kind of go that direction makes me nervous. So I feel like it's really hard. It can be hard to distinguish that if you're not tuned in. And you might mistake it for an inner wisdom when it's really an inner fear or an inner and that I think can be an easy thing. So I think it's a little more concrete to think about, what are my reasons? Like what is maybe the way to do that is like, what does your intuition tell you? What is the decision here? And then what are the reasons for that? And list them out. And then ask yourself, do you like those reasons? Like, sometimes we don't know. I mean, some of the choices that I didn't make because of fear, I wasn't really aware that fear was pushing me around, at the time.
Sure.
I didn't really have the tools to kind of be aware that I didn't want to go take the foreign service exam because I was basically afraid of failing it. And I didn't want to face failure. Like those were all things that I learned much later. But I think it is, we can all make a choice and then write out all the reasons why are we choosing this, so I want to
we have like a minute or two left, and I'm going to get personal. You've revealed a lot in your journey in caring for your husband. Do you have any regrets?
No. I don't know that anybody's ever asked me that point blank, but I think because from early on, we both were introduced to some of these ideas around regret. So I've made the choice not to. Have I thought about, I wonder what would have happened? I have gone down that road a little bit. But I also recognize it's just not useful. Like, it is not useful for me to do a mind trip down what if we had done this differently, or if we hadn't done this, because we didn't, right? Or at least
and that was part of the journey. And again, you did the best with what you had at that moment. And I could do the same thing too in my life. I look back at one particular personal situation where I kind of knew the answer, but I let years go by, and deep inside, I always had this feeling, and I was right. But what I had was not the confidence to make a change at that time. Now, totally different situation. So that's, we have what we have at the time. So I agree with you. It's almost pointless to look back. That's then. And you did the best of what you had. I don't mean you, but I mean all of us with what we had. Yeah.
And how can we do our best now? I think is the better question to always be asking to avoid regrets going forward. What is my best now? And what do I want? What are my limits? Those are the questions that I don't think we ask ourselves enough when we're caregiving. What do I want from this? What is most important? What is meaningful to me and to them?
You put this on the table and make it very clear. And I truly appreciate your answer about your personal situation and regrets. Honestly, Marika, hearing that inside of me made me feel good. It was just like,
Good.
oh, wonderful. And,
Yeah.
and you could have regrets. You could.
Yeah.
But really, you've realized that what's the point?
Yeah.
If you really wanted to jump down the rabbit hole, coulda, woulda, shoulda. What's the point?
It is a useless, it's just a waste of our energy.
Yeah.
When there's other things that are more useful place for that energy.
Exactly.
So,
how do we connect with you? If somebody is trying to dissect this whole situation, maybe feeling some regrets, they don't want to feel any more, to navigate the caregiving life, how do they find you?
Yeah, my website is the best place, coachmarika.com. And on there, you can go to my podcast. I've got a podcast with links on there, as well as like ways to connect with me and set up a consultation right from my website.
You're a professional of the year in this arena, and with good reason. Thank you for what you do. Nobody does it. And it's so important. And as life goes on, we're caring for others. I get it. Even in my world, doing the same exact thing. And there can be regrets, but let them go. Thank you. Thanks so much for being here today.
All right. Thanks,
Appreciate
Steve.
it. We are coming right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.